Next slide. That's not me anymore, is it?
That's it. Thank you very much, sir. So now we move on to the actual application process itself. A lot of you guys already know the information that I'm going to give you, but it's just worth reiterating just to really get it glued into your heads and really, I guess, understand the importance of the application process itself. So on the 8th of September, this date might be a bit incorrect, but this is the date that I got from online. That's when your applications will be, you'll be able to actually submit your applications and get them sent off from that date and onwards. The 15th of October, that's your Oxbridge and medicine deadline. I know you guys aren't studying medicine, so that's perfectly fine. But for those of you who are going to be applying for Oxford or Cambridge, that date is the important date. You have to make sure your application is sent off before then or on that day itself. And in March 2021, that's when the applications will be closing completely. With that being said, most people generally do submit their applications by December, January time, if they're not applying for Oxford or Cambridge. So you want to make sure that you're ahead of the game. You should be submitting your application either by October anyway, or I'd say latest November or December, because universities will be looking at the applications in the order that they come in as well. So you want to make sure that you're going to be the first of the first batches that they read, and you're not going to be left to the end. And the spaces aren't really available, especially with the coming year because of COVID. I know more people will be taking gap years. Some people will be considering, reapplying. So your competition is going to be even more fierce. And the personal statement itself, that's going to be 4,000 characters and a total of 47 lines, whichever you hit first, of course. That's the main caveat. Why is it important? So this is your only opportunity that you have, if you're not doing an interview or an entrance exam, for you to really show yourself off to your university. When a university admissions person, he looks at your personal statement, this is going to be the first time that they really see you for who you are as a person yourself. The first sentence he reads, that's going to be the first sentence that defines you as a person and defines what they think about you. So each and every single sentence that you're writing in your personal statement, it forms a picture, it forms a story for the admissions tutor or the admissions officer to understand about yourself. And that's what you have to portray to the admissions officer. So it's very, very important that the personal statement that you write, it shows someone who is, willing to go to university, someone who's passionate for their subject that they're applying for, and really stands out from amongst the rest of the crowd. You don't want to be every average Joe. You want to be someone who's completely different and unique in that. Is it hard? The blunt fact is, to get straight to the point, it is hard. It is something that's going to be very, very difficult. You're going to rewrite your personal statement so many times. You're going to keep on drafting it. And at the end of it, you might even get sick of it because you've read it so many times. But with that being said, there's support out there. You have your teachers, you have us, and you have many different ways in which that whole journey, that whole process, it becomes easier for you. So yes, it might be hard, but you can make it easier for yourself and you can get through it just how everyone else gets through it as well. And I'll pass it over to Farzan on the next slide.
All right. Now we get to the real juicy part of the webinar. So how to write a perfect personal statement. Just to give you guys an introduction into what we're going to be speaking about. So the next few slides, we're going to do a kind of step-to-step breakdown with regards to how to break down your content, the structure, the style of writing, and essentially basically the ideal personal statement. Now this was made by all of us, some of us with offers from Cambridge, Oxford, LSE, Ross Group universities, things like that, as well as with consulted teachers and things like that. You will see throughout these slides, we're going to have prompt questions. These are there for you guys to analyze pieces of academic literature or just to get your thought process going, just to think about it in depth, about your own academic or personal development journey. These are very general. If you do have questions, please wait till the end, or if you can't, just put it in the chat box and hopefully when the host gets time, he'll ask the question and we can get to that. So you'll see a few examples as well. Now, just to clarify, there's two types. There's a thematic approach and there's a non-thematic approach when it comes to personal statements. The first kind of approach is used for subjects such as history, politics, where you focus on key ideas and themes and you go use that theme throughout the personal statement. So me personally, I did politics, philosophy, economics. So I chose the theme of inequality and I focused on inequality from a political perspective an economic perspective, and also a philosophical perspective. And I kept that throughout the whole personal statement. So it's also quite useful when you do mixed degrees to have a thematic approach. Other subjects, such as law, you would have a non-thematic approach, where the personal statement will be a mix of points and skills. To have the most competitive application, you need to show a few things: academic ability and potential, subject requirement. This is a must. Your predicted grades need to be aligned with the grades that they have on the website. You need to show a genuine interest and a motivation, as well as enthusiasm for the subject. It's not, you can't just say I want to study the subject because it paves the way to a good degree or meet good people. You need to show that the actual content of that subject, like why do you want to study philosophy? What interests you about it? When did your interest start? Things like that. They need to see that you're a good fit as an applicant for this course. There's a lot of courses that would have very, very few people. My course has around 30 people in the whole year. So they really, really handpick students to make sure it's like the best applicant for this course. That you will be someone who will really engage with that course, someone who will go out university and be a good kind of ambassador for that course. Yeah, and so these are the things that we'll focus on. And I'll just hand it over to the next person.
So the purpose of this slide is sort of to understand what universities are looking for as an applicant. Now, this will give you an idea as to what you should include, what to entirely stray away from, and more importantly, how your personal statement should flow in its content, its structure, and its style. Now, if we go through each of these points and an explanation of why you have chosen the course. Now, we'll delve into how you can approach this later on, but to just briefly explain, it allows you to differentiate yourself from other candidates, and it confirms your suitability to the course and your commitment. Now, number two, I think is the most important out of all of these. It's because when discussing demonstrating one's enthusiasm and academic commitment, I wanted to very much hone on this topic of supercurricular activities, because this indicates your subject interest and essentially going beyond the school syllabus. What is a supercurricular activity? So it is anything that you have done that enhances your learning and is not part of your compulsory studies at school. Now, can you see why this now links to enthusiasm and commitment? It's because you're now either going into further academic content, you're finding out what is relevant to your chosen subject interest, and you're moving beyond your A-level syllabus. Now, it is to be noted that some universities do not take into account extracurricular activities that are not related to the course applied for. To differentiate between what a supercurricular and extracurricular are, extracurricular activities tend to be those outside of the academic sphere. So, for example, a Duke of Edinburgh. And it's important that you bear this in mind, and whether your university wants you to talk about these extracurricular activities, and if so, in how much detail. With number three, finding a particular area of interest in your field of study. Ideally, this would be personal to your academic interest or journey, because we'll be discussing this later. But the more specific you can be, the better you can engage with this ideology or the concept, for example, as Rehan said, inequality in your personal statement. Number four is originality and independence of thought. This is really important because admissions tutors want to see how you act as an undergraduate, and then your ability to demonstrate critical thinking and just not replicating what they want to hear. You want to show that you've put effort into thinking about this course and you know why you want to do it, and you have opinions based on evidence, and you can actually demonstrate that as you go through your personal statement. Number five is pretty self-explanatory. It's possessing relevant knowledge and skills for the subject. This could be illustrated by, for example, activities you've taken part in, let's say a work experience, and sort of your personality traits whilst doing that. So maybe leadership, commitment, stuff like that, which we've touched on before. Number six is analysis of what you have done to learn or prepare for your course. I think analysis is the key word here, because we'll discuss this later, but analysis ties in all of your supercurricular activities. As opposed to just listing them, you're more going in depth with every single one of them. And you're now linking this idea, this supercurricular, whatever you're doing, to how you now understand your subject in depth. Now, moving on to the next slide, I think it's very important, or we think it's very important, to understand not only what your university wants from you, but actually what they want you to avoid. The first one being any form of plagiarism. Plagiarism automatically will be flagged by the UCAS system. So if you, for example, we're going to show you a few examples of personal statements. If you like the way an individual wrote their personal statement, that's fine. But it is better to ask questions about how they did that thing and then apply this technique to your individual interests and your points of discussion rather than copying it. Because this way you're achieving your desired result, which is an amazing personal statement, but you're learning in the process and you're understanding how can I apply this technique to myself. As well as that, the last thing you'd want to do is demonstrate unoriginality and then stick to a personal statement that, let's say you then go and get interviewed on, you won't even have that interest that you can then speak about. So make sure you choose something that is important to you and not to another person that you've seen speak about. Number 2 is irrelevant information. So if you're struggling to make a link between an activity you've done and its relevance to your degree, it may be that it's not relevant at all. Now, remember that you have a limited word count, and it is better that you focus on a few activities that you can analyze and discuss in detail, even if it means you need to cut out something that sounds so impressive to you, but then it would be meaningless to an admissions tutor. So stick to the point. Don't go off on tangents or waffle. And even if that's a bit difficult for you, because I know it was really difficult for me to not go off topic, try to maybe cap yourself to a word limit for a specific thing that you're talking about, or even like a sentence limit. So for example, if you're talking about your work experience, stick to maybe 2 sentences, because now you know, okay, I'm going to very, very quickly speak about what I've done, and I'm going to spend more time analyzing what I've gained from this, as opposed to just going off on tangents about every single activity that you've possibly ever done. And one sort of tip or advice we'd give is, when doing this, you can do something called the word test. And what it is read the sentence that you've got in front of you that you're finding difficulty with seeing if it's relevant or not. And let's say the word is law that you've put in the sentence because it's about law, obviously. Take that word out, or maybe even put a different degree and put in politics, even though you don't want to do it. Put in medicine. If your sentence is, I like law because it's fun, you can literally put in, I like medicine because it's fun. Is that necessary for you to then take out and take up your character count by doing that? No. So it's easier for you to just check whether you're doing something that's more suited to your degree. Number 3 is writing what you think sounds impressive. So maybe clever sounding quotes or flowery language. I think there are a few mistakes that you can fall into when you think you're writing something that's really impressive. Number 1 can be you use words you don't understand. And essentially what you end up doing is you've distorted this message that you're trying to put across. And the worst thing you want to do is act like you agree with something, or try to portray that you're agreeing with a certain view, and then write it, and actually you'll end up arguing for something that you didn't even realize you're arguing for because you don't know what you're saying. So personal statements are largely scored in a very objective way. You need correct English without looking like you've swallowed a thesaurus. It's not to say don't use big words, but what it means is use words that are big where they're relevant. So for example, if you're doing something to do with law, sometimes you're going to need to use technical legal language. For example, mens rea. You can use that. That's not like you swallowed a thesaurus, but you don't need to use other words that are not relevant to the degree. Number 2, you'll end up taking away from your own voice. It is better that you write in your own voice, that you use your own thoughts and your own opinions, than trying to be someone else to an admissions tutor that can pretty much see through you. Number 4, lying about what you've read. I got this bit from Dr. Sam Lucy, who's Director of Admissions at Cambridge. And she said they often refer to personal statements at the interview stage. And the point is to check whether your enthusiasm is genuine. In particular, they get an idea of where within your subject this enthusiasm lies. So lying is bound to be found out either later on or whilst they're reading. And even so, you can tell when you're lying because it will hinder your ability to really engage with the material as much as you can.
Just a small point for us to note about point number 2 and point number 3. Some people, when they actually look at personal statements, they try to write it in a way whereby they think the admissions officer or the admissions director, they want to see someone who's done so many things in their life and they're all about extracurricular activities and, you know, they do so many different things. So you go down the tangent of just listing as many things as you can and you want to include as much as you can in your personal statement. On the other hand, some people, they might turn their personal statement into like a sort of an essay, or they might write their personal statement in a way which is very, very academic and, you know, you're talking about key things and critiquing things. But the reason why they think that is because when they're applying for universities like Oxford, Cambridge, LSE, some of these universities they do want to see someone who's academic. But the point is not trying to go down one or go down the other. The point is trying to find the perfect balance in between the two. Because an academic who's looking at your personal statement, they know all of the stuff that you've written in your essay style personal statement. They don't want to see someone who's just giving them a lecture. Similarly, they don't want to see someone who's spending so much of their time doing other things and doing all these extracurricular activities, because they want to see someone who's also academically inclined as well. So the point of your personal statement is to try and marry the two together and make them complementary in how you approach and how you write your personal statement. And one tip that I could just sort of add in here is think about something that you might have done that you want to include. How is that relevant to your degree in particular? How does it show that you're more academically inclined, or how does it show that you're utilizing it to benefit your degree in either by a skill or through learning more academically interesting things?
Can I just add one thing to that? So, you know, with point 4, lying about what you've read, a lot of students, they take to the other extreme. So, so I was speaking to someone who told me to check their personal statement, and they were in the process of reading the entirety of Plato's Republic. You don't need to read a book cover to cover like that, 400 pages of a very, very boring book to say that you've read the book. If you fully understand the book and you've read a good chunk of it, it's okay to say I've read that book. Because it's inefficient to read entire books cover to cover like that, and you're not spending your time in the best way. But that's just one point to note there. You can say you've read a book if you read good chunks of it and you understand the general thing with regards to it.
The point really is just, oh, sorry if I was after you.
No, go on, it's fine, carry on.
No, I was just going to say the point really is try and understand the crux of the book, try and understand what the thesis of the author is, what he's trying to portray, and what the nuances of his argument are. And you can understand that by reading a bit of the book and maybe watching a YouTube video on it and trying to understand the whole sort of thesis in that way. So you cannot utilize that approach as well.
Yeah, everything that's been mentioned will be explained further as we break your personal statement down. The one thing I want to say is don't underestimate how serious of an issue plagiarism is, because some of you may or may not know this. But for example, if you're doing law, personal statements, plagiarism stays on your record, and it could be the case that firms are deterred from offering you a job or any organization because of your plagiarism. So you might think, oh, it's just one paragraph from a personal statement. But if, and most likely when, you are caught out, it will stay on your record. And to be honest, it's not really worth it. So just make sure you bear that in mind. Don't underestimate how important and severe of a matter it actually is.